Hello, Serge here from the Backyard Driving Range. Okay, I think today I just want to start off with I guess you could say a quote one of our Sergites sent in. This comes from Randy Wolf from Atlanta, one of my students here, and Randy is big into club fitting, and he's had his clubs fitted by Doc, and he's really deep into swing surgeon. And he sent me this quote the other day. I guess he was having some deep, insightful thought going, and he says, quote, "If you do what you've always done when you swing a golf club, when swinging a golf club, you get what you've always gotten." Okay, so I guess that means that even though when you're trying to learn a peak performance swing or learn anything, you've got to make sure that concentrate on that you are actually making changes. And one of the best things I truly like to hear when I'm working with students is this feels uncomfortable, or this feels different. Thank you. If we're changing your setup and we're changing your swing some, then, and we're not scared about changing. I mean, nothing kills me more than when I read and I hear other teachers say, we're going to work with what you got and make it better. Well, I don't know, somehow I think it's pretty hard to turn chicken poop into chicken salad. And so if what you were doing wasn't working, as Randy just said here, why keep doing it? All right, it's time to change, and change has to have different feelings in terms of your setup and your swing. And so consequently, like I said, I love to hear people say this doesn't feel correct, or this is setup feels awkward or different or whatever, because thank you, that means you're doing something. And especially if I'm liking what I'm looking at in terms of your setup and swing, then you're making corrections for the good. And as you all know, that's come to this swing. This is an easy swing to learn. Once you learn the setup, then the swing becomes very easy, because it's all physics, physiology, the way the body's designed to move in coordination with physics. Okay? So with that said, and again, thank Randy, if you do what you've always done when you're swinging a golf club, you will get what you've always gotten. And so great quote. So what I want to do at this point is to talk about a lesson I've recently had with one of my longtime Sergites who lives in Greensville. And that was with Richard. And Richard's been working really hard with me for about 4 or 5 years now. And I mean, he's been I guess a heck of a good Sergite. He's brought his brother, who's also a doctor, and Richard's a doctor. He's a dentist, and his brother's is a anesthesiologist. And he's brought both of his sons here, who are both adult grown men, and the whole family's into peak performance big time. And Richard, basically, like so many Sergites I see in lessons, and especially at golf schools, has a pretty good surge setup, has a really good understanding of the swing. I mean, they probably can memorize, they can probably recite almost every word out of the manual, the peak performance manual, and a lot of the videos, but they're just not really hitting the ball as good as they'd like to. And in most cases, it's what I see all the time. I'm just not hitting the ball far enough. And Richard, I mean, he had a really pretty good setup. He tended, like everybody, to have his weight back on the heels. He's always sitting back here. We use the concept of, if you were to take the center of your hip in your stance, like when you're in here standing here, take your club over here, put it in the center of your hip, and put the club down to the ground, straight down, and see where it should be. You're going to see many of you, I see it all the time, you're on your heels. The heels are too far under you. And so it's difficult to lift the club up when the heels are back. When your feet are way too under you and your weight's on your heels. And many times you can see that. It's amazing how many times I see golfers in there, they do this when they're standing there, the toes are coming off the ground. All right? Now, where should it be? Number one, it should be what we call athletically ready, sort of like when you're playing shortstop, or if you're waiting for a tennis serve, the weight should be in the arches. That's the point right in the center of your feet, between the front of the heel and the back of the heel pad. So you want the weight evenly distributed from the back of your heel, and in front of your heel, and the back of your balls of your foot. All right, and you want it in that central area, which, like right here, these shoes have the perfect spot right there where the tan comes down here, the brown. Okay, so you're ready. Your knee should basically be, and from that position, when you get in that position, you put the club from your setup, and you put the club in at your center of your hip and straight down. It should be at your ankles. Okay. Now, one of the things I have to teach all swing surgeon certified instructors is that rotational swings, because they're getting the club way behind them over here, folks have to, and they're coming across the ball, they creep into the ball for 2 reasons. They got to get closer to the ball, because they tend to be, as they spin out of the way, that pulls everything inside. All right, so it ends up making them stand closer, but they also have to stand closer, because when they get that big turn and they get the hands way back here, if they were standing in the peak performance athletically ready setup and they get back there, they'll fall backwards. So the balance system automatically makes them have to come under more and get underneath there so that way they don't fall down. Remember, the balance system, or your balance buddies, I call them, has one job: to keep you standing up. And if you're in the wrong positions, it will start making adjustments for you in the swing to help you not fall down. Okay? And so, and a balance buddy has to kick in on these positions to make these adjustments during the swing, because he has to get you adjusted and moving another way, because if he lets you go all the way to where you start losing your balance, it's too late. Gravity's got you, you're going to fall down. So taking that into consideration, the first thing we've always had to work consistently on with Richard is to back him up and get his feet a little farther back and get him ready. All right? So we started off this lesson doing that. And then he's hitting the ball, and he's got the peak performance swing. He's taking the club straight back in the mitt and relatively straight up. He tends to get maybe a little laid off, but not really bad. And he tends to swing down and through up to a pretty good finish and pretty much get to a decent finish. All right? But the point is, he's not hitting the ball. I mean, he just has no speed. And so I've always said basically the same thing. That when he came up and he started down, it was like he right as he transitions, you could see all his hands and his forearms and his arms and his shoulders and chest, everything just tightened up. And from there, he just came down and basically it was like pushing the ball to the target. All right, that was a poor example. At least Richard gets it up in the air and hits pretty decent shots, but they're usually hanging right, and you can see there's a strain hitting the ball. And so I don't know kind of what really kicked in this day, but I just said, we filmed him again like we always do, and we looked at it and I said, look at you, Richard, you're tight, you're not moving. I said, let's get the club going. We did some of these swings, you know, get the club whipping, and all of a sudden he started hitting a little bit better, and then all of a sudden he made one swing. It was like, holy cannoli, where did that come from? He said, wow, that was good. And I said, well, what happened? What'd you feel? He said, well, I just finally for the first time really felt that I really swung at it fast. I mean, explain that, Richard? I just made my arms go really fast. I said, well, how did that happen? And he said that he felt that he finally figured out when we were talking and looking at his swing and looking at mine. He said, I think that, as you know, I was rotational when I started working with you, and I've been doing it for years. And he said, I think I was still kind of stuck into a lot of the philosophies of all those lessons, which was hold the club very lightly, take the big turn, and you keep holding the club lightly, and when you start your turn and you really snap your hips and everything else, to swing forward and pull the club down, and it pulls your arms through the body. He says, I think I was still in that position, and where I wasn't really swinging my arms. It's like, so I said, yeah, well, that's not going to work, because we're keeping the body still, so the body's not pulling the arms. The body stays still so we can swing the arms. He said, exactly. And so I went on and I just asked him. I said, well, what triggers you, do you think, to always tighten up when you're making that transition? And he said, I don't know, but it just happens. But he said I think the thing that might have helped it was, like you've always said, you have to have equal grip pressure in both hands and forearms, and it's got to be relatively firm. I just decided on that swing to firm everything up more, like you said. You know, just boom, you get going, you keep it firm. And he said, when I got up there, the firmness gave me the control of the club to be able to just pull that thing down and just rip it through impact to the finish. I said, okay, good. So I said, you think that therefore the grip pressure had a lot to do with it? He said, I think absolutely. I said, okay, well, let's just go back and try to examine or figure out why were you always tightening up the club, tightening up your hands and arms at the transition, which slowed you down. Never mind the fact you were out of balance because your feet were too under you and your weight was back behind your heels. I said, why did you tighten up? And I said, it has to be the simple fact that why do most people always end up grabbing the club somewhere along? They say, I feel like I'm grabbing the club and somewhere out here, like especially if you're going like this and the club's going that way. As I've always said, you gotta stop the club, you gotta get control of it, because the club's going that way. When you swung from parallel and you pulled it up, and the club's going that way and the ball's down there, you got to grab it, stop it, you get control of it and redirect it. So that tightens everything up. So that's how, that was one of the main proofs of our results of the first biomechanical study I ever did, the effect of a shortening of the full golf backswing on club head velocity at ball impact. When we took overswingers, parallel and overswingers with a 7-iron and shortened them up to 3/4, they gained club head speed over the long swing, and or even if the speed was the same at impact, the long swing was in negative acceleration and the short swing was still in positive acceleration. And as we know, on, square and solid is for everything from the driver all the way to the putter. So the ultimate conclusion was when they had to figure out why did the club slow down, it was because you had to stop it from going that way, and that's when you grabbed it and you tightened up, everything tightened up, it slowed down. So Richard was in effect doing was the same thing, because he was involved with that same principle when he was doing the rotational swing, as well as the fact that now, even though he was trying to go 3/4, he was holding the club too lightly, so when it was time to transition, he had to grab the club, because now he's getting ready to try to speed up, but he doesn't have a firm grip on it, and he's got to tighten it. As soon as he tightened it, everything tightened up, and now he's just sort of like, he's all tightened up, and he's just coming down and kind of like put the club on the ball. Except now when he was firmer, he was up here. Now with firm grip, he's up here. As soon as he transitions, he's got the club, baby. All you got to do is hold on and just rip it to the finish. Because as you know, we don't hit down the ball, we swing up to the tee finish. So Richard had his major revelation, his awakening, and it basically was when he figured out that he was still had components, too many of the points of the rotational swing, specifically being you can't swing the club if you're really not holding on, and you got to have that relatively firm grip, like a good business handshake. And it's got to be equal with both hands. So as we say, if 1 is a dead fish and 5 is squeezing your grip, your hands together so tight where your knuckles are starting to hurt and you're getting locked up, that's 5, that's still good. You want to be 3 right in the middle. So equal with both hands. And so now when you're equal, and whatever pressure you start with from your hands right up to your forearms, and we firm up right to just below the elbow, I actually call it for myself. I go into lockdown. When I put my last boom lockdown there, and I swing from there to impact to finish to here, nothing changes. Not one muscle in my arms, and realistically, I try to feel for my whole body that what I start with stays consistent all the way to the recoil relax, and then I let go. And when that happens, you're going to make much better swings, be able to have an accelerating forward swing, hit the ball more solid and straight like that, and shoot those lower scores. That's it for the search for today, and I'll be talking with you all again soon.